So, Thomas Massie has been pretty slow to endorse Trump, only doing so this weekend. Laura Loomer had a mild meltdown over this. Many Massie fans suggested she drop it and take the win, as having Massie on board would cause more libertarians to vote for Trump. Laura suggested that Massie's late endorsement had no effect and that all the heavy lifting of getting libertarians to vote Trump had already been accomplished by Trump going to the Libertarian Convention. And I'll have to say to that one, not really. It's a lot more complicated than that. The nature of the libertarian movement is more complicated than that. Be very clear, I like Laura Loomer a lot. I think she's an incredibly hard worker. She's really professional. Her documentaries are fantastic. She breaks a lot of information. She's a very tough fighter, and at the same time can be wonderfully sarcastic and humorous. In this case, it's my opinion that she doesn't know enough about the libertarian movement to make a call like this. Now, there's a lot of difficulties involved in being a libertarian. It's easy being a Republican or a Democrat. You just basically do your thing, and worst case, people say, well, gee, you don't know what you're talking about, but hey, you're one of the big guys, you're fine. To be a libertarian requires a person to go through essentially a brutal hammering most of their life. They're constantly being told that their positions are wrong. They're knocked about for always being in the loser position because there isn't enough of them to make a difference. And to fully understand the libertarian philosophy requires a lot of in depth research and discussion to basically fully fill out what exactly it is they believe. So it's not as easy as a Republican or a Democrat who can kind of come in a la carte, pick a few things off their table and say, okay, I'm one of you, and not even know what else is there. Whereas a libertarian is well aware of everything that the Libertarian Party has to offer. So the thing is they become very resilient because they've put in a lot of effort into it. They've got a lot of sunk capital. So they walk in election after election knowing that victory is improbable at best, yet they keep doing it. Now, being a tenacious voting bloc is what makes the Libertarians valuable as a group, especially when the polls are saying a few thousand votes could tip the election. An identifiable voting bloc with clear desires in a tight race is what enticed Trump to come to the Libertarian Convention in the first place. Now, libertarians very much love the handful of candidates that have made it to some kind of position, most of them being Republicans of a libertarian bent. If they make it to office and they're true to our belief system, they gain a lot of love from the libertarian crowd. Thomas Massie is one of those people. He and others like him are revered and have a lot of influence in our circles. Ultimately, Laura Loomer expects loyalty to Trump, and there's nothing wrong with that. It has its place, it fits, it works very well for what she's doing in this particular election. However, libertarians typically don't have loyalty directly to people for personalities. They have loyalty to their philosophy first. That loyalty only gets attached to people who can talk the libertarian talk or walk the walk. Now, if the only thing that happened was that Trump showed up at the convention, I'm telling you right now, the libertarian vote would not be in play in any meaningful way. Trump is not a libertarian. He has some libertarian positions, but he arrives at them not via our philosophy. And not being bound to the philosophy, that makes libertarians very nervous and they suspect how strong Trump might adhere to his views if we and he doesn't know where they came from. He could just as easily change his view as he gained them if something else comes along to tell him differently. Libertarians, and I can't speak on the whole of us, but I would say a lot of libertarians admire the handful of small government victories that he achieved as president His ravaging of the media was entertaining, at least, if not actually a benefit. However, if Trump going to the Libertarian Convention wasn't the whole of it, what was it to make the whole Trump Libertarian nexus happen? Well, first we have to know that in 2020, the Libertarian Party became dominated by a clique of what could only be described as woke libertarians. Uh, Essentially, this caused a very major backlash. This would cause, and the party's made up of numerous caucuses. One particular caucus, in this case, is the Mises caucus, which moved in, retook the party, and at a major, not actually the true leader of the movement, but the spiritual leader, perhaps, was David Smith. Dave Smith, fairly famous comedian, very well spoken libertarian. And it became very clear that he was a potential national candidate for president. He was well liked within his group, and he was able to reach out to a lot of people because of his being a comedian, being a clear communicator, being very gregarious. Uh, People enjoy having him on their shows. He would have been probably one of the best pure libertarian candidates we'd had in a long time. Unfortunately, due to personal reasons, Dave Smith had to bow out. Now, what happens is the party was in a position where it had a candidate that could have made an impact all on his own. The candidate disappeared, and we were down to essentially people that were no names, people that were kind of known in the party, but not very well known outside the party at all. Uh, Into this mix, Trump was invited to the national convention. Now, it's my understanding that all presidential candidates before this have been invited and no one's bothered to show up. So thank you, Trump, for showing up. Now, if you're a libertarian and you heard the speech that Trump gave to the Libertarian Convention, you'd end up wincing at a lot of points because Trump was kind of mixing his normal stump speech with a couple of libertarian platitudes. And the normal stump stuff doesn't fly well with his group. However, he did make some solid promises that did resonate. But the idea that he won libertarians over at that point is questionable. What Trump did here is he came to the door. Now we start talking about how the door gets opened. In the aftermath of Trump's speech, Dave Smith essentially had a proxy candidate who was filling in for his caucus, and he was widely expected to win. However, he wouldn't have had the same kind of throw weight as Dave would have had in the electorate, most likely. Due to a bunch of complicated reasons, his proxy ended up kind of imploding at the convention through a bunch of very arcane and painful maneuvers. We ended up with Chase Oliver as the candidate for the Libertarian Party. So, for the most part, Chase is a nobody. And I'm not saying that to be derogatory. He isn't even all that well known within the party, much less outside the party. He's not the strongest spokesman for the party. And I could say, really, right now, he's probably the weakest candidate the Libertarian Party has probably fielded since its founding. Maybe like the first two might have been weaker just because we didn't have the state reach. But he's definitely nothing to rally around, so to speak. Another problem with Chase Oliver is he appears to feel compelled to embrace wokeness first and libertarianism second. So, what little activity he does in terms of getting out policy statements tends to alienate even more libertarians. Every time I see a statement come out, basically I see another barrage of libertarians commenting on just how inane his ability to communicate libertarians' ideas are. So, essentially, since the convention now, That means we've gotten a candidate that's hard to rally around and a candidate who's been essentially alienating more people as he goes along. Some of these people are going to end up moving over to Trump. Now, part of what continues this move is RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. have some resonance with libertarians because they're anti-war candidates. Libertarians are generally against war, or at least definitely initiating war. These two candidates also resonate because, well, they're hated by their party, and they tend to see many of the same problems that libertarians see. Now, the problem comes up is we question if they have libertarian solutions to those problems. Their anti-war cred is huge. It carries a lot of weight with libertarians. Now, if these guys had stayed off on their own doing their own little thing, it wouldn't have had much impact on anything. However, RFK Jr. and Tulsi joining with Trump moved more libertarians into backing Trump than Trump alone. It gave Trump's anti-war creds more cred. So Trump had kind of a mixed bag as a president. Yes, he started no new wars. However, he did get suckered into bombing in Syria and also attacking the Iranian general in charge of their Revolutionary Guard. So libertarians were very critical, thinking, well, okay, on one hand, yeah, he didn't get us into anything worse, but that wasn't necessarily good either. And he really didn't explain himself well enough in terms of how libertarians look at things to say, yep, we're definitely going with that. So by adding RFK Jr. and Tulsi, it rebuilt that area where libertarians were doubting. RFK Jr. and Tulsi very likely brought in a lot of libertarians. So in that time frame, many well-known libertarians, such as Angela McArdle and Dave Smith, have come out not exactly endorsing Trump, but pretty much saying it's okay for libertarians to vote for Trump. That kind of thing has a lot of impact because as libertarians, we have our own circles, and you always wonder, like, okay, am I going to commit some gross libertarian faux pas that's going to make it hard for me to get back in people's good graces? But if you have people who are essentially respected by a lot of people and they're saying, yeah, look at what's going on here, it's okay, it brings in even more libertarians moving in that direction. Now, Thomas Massie has a lot of libertarian supporters all over the United States. And his endorsement is probably worth at least hundreds, if not thousands, of votes, some of which are surely bunched up in the tight battleground states. It could be the tipping point to victory. So in short, Laura Loomer respects loyalty to a person, in this case, Donald Trump. Nothing wrong with that. It's what's going to get things done. Libertarians respect loyalty to the philosophy. Trump, by design and accident, has been entangled in enough of these threads of this philosophy to add libertarians to his voting pool. Thomas Massie happens to be one of those threads. All right, so in the comment section below, tell me if you've been following this in any way whatsoever. If you're thinking of voting in the Trump direction, if any of the personalities I mentioned got you to think more along those lines, RFK Jr., Tulsi, Massie, McArdle, Dave Smith. Is there anybody else out there, like maybe Rand Paul, you're waiting for him to come down and make a decision before you make your final pull? Are you still undecided? Are you going to be undecided till you walk into the voting booth? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Please smash the like button. If the YouTube algorithm has brought you here and you're not a regular subscriber, please look at my other titles. I do a lot of different things. Consider subscribing. And if you know somebody who might find this interesting, please share it with them. Thank you for spending time with me this evening. Hope to see you again in a future video.